Good evening. The Board of Commissioners is the governing body of Clatsop County, all county service districts for which this body so acts, and as the Clatsop County Local Contract Review Board is now meeting in regular session. Please join me for the flag salute. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. May I have the roll call, please?
Commissioner Nepper.
Here.
Commissioner Clement.
Here.
Commissioner Lee.
Here.
Commissioner Silva.
Here.
Commissioner Thompson.
Here.
Looking for a motion to approve the agenda as presented.
So moved.
Second.
We have a motion to second to approve the agenda. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now is the time for business from the public. This is an opportunity for anyone to give a 3-minute presentation about any item on the agenda except public hearings or any topic of county concern that is not on the agenda. People wishing to speak during the business from the public must fill out and sign public comment sign-in card. I have one today, Mr. Andy Davis. Is there anybody else that would like to speak today? Okay, seeing none, we'll invite our first guest. Mr. Davis, please come up, state your name for the record and your address. Welcome.
Sure, thank you. My name's Andy Davis. I live at 376 3rd Street.
Should we give you a chair?
I'm okay without the chair. I won't be long, really.
Sorry. Not very hospitable.
Yeah, I was going to say, you are our guest. So.
I'm just here to speak to agenda item 7D. That is the feasibility study contract. I have a slight concern so I've tried to follow the feasibility study, the first portion of it, as it came through the commission the first time around for Mr. Gaffney. And I think the commission made a justifiable decision to allow that to go forward in order to get data about the proposal, to find out what the landscape is and the feasibility of the project itself. I have some concern that this seems to be coming through fairly quickly, and as a sole source contract, I'm a little concerned that we haven't done enough diligence about what the project entails, what we're going to get out of it. The timelines don't seem to match from the contract to the data in the back of the proposal, so I'm a little concerned that maybe it hasn't even been fleshed out as much as it should be, and it's a relatively large amount of money. So I'm just here to ask that you consider tabling it so that there can be more discussion at a meeting that doesn't have huge items like the budget in it. So that's all. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Davis. Okay, seeing no more public comment, we'll move on. Looking for a motion to approve the consent calendar as presented.
So move.
Second.
We have a motion to second to approve the consent calendar. All those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Now we're going to move on to some public hearings. This is a time set for public hearing on fiscal year 2017-18 Clatsop County budget. May I have the staff report, please?
Good evening. At the meeting on May 9th, 2017, the Clatsop County Budget Committee approved the county's 17-18 proposed annual budget. In accordance with Oregon's budget law, ORS 294.453, the next step in the process is for the board to hold a public hearing on the approved budget. The purpose of this hearing is to consider testimony from any and all persons who may wish to comment on the approved budget. No action by the board is required at this time. In addition, staff is evaluating the need to request adjustments to the approved budget based on new information that was not made available when the budget was approved by the Budget Committee in May. Adjustments to the approved budget are limited pursuant to ORS 294.456 to the following: reduction or elimination of any requirement or proposed expenditure, increase in expenditures by not more than $5,000 or 10%, whichever is greater, of Budget Committee approved total in each or any fund, and an increase in expenditures by more than $5,000 or 10% by any fund by republishing the budget and hold a second hearing before July 1st. The 17-18 approved county budget totals $72,084,420, including unappropriated fund balances of $2,455,390 in the Special Projects Fund and $4,529,810 in the General Fund. The board has approved appropriation authority in the amount of $65,099,220. Staff recommends that the board hold the public hearing on the 17-18 approved county budget to consider testimony from any and all persons who may wish to make comment pursuant to ORS 294.453.
Thank you for the staff report. Is there any public testimony? Seeing no public testimony, before I close the public hearing, would this be a good time to have a conversation concerning the district attorney's request? Or should we close the public hearing and then do that? I'm kind of looking at council. Should we close the public hearing and then have that discussion?
This one,
Okay.
yes.
Yeah, seeing no further public testimony, I will now close the public hearing, and the budget adoption is scheduled for June 28th. The commissioners, I would like to introduce, I've been in conversation with the district attorney, and we have a budget amendment for a full-time medical inspector. The district attorney's requested that we increase the compensation approximately, I think, $1,800 a year. So what I'd look for is consensus from the board, and I'm looking around to if we support that, and we can give guidance to the staff, and then staff will bring that back with the final budget, and then we can decide then if we approve that or not. So I'm looking around, I see that Lisa and Sarah, are you good with that?
I'm good.
And Commissioner Thompson?
I won't block consensus on this.
You won't, okay, so we have consensus to my recommendation for the district attorney's adjustment? Okay, fair enough. So staff has direction on that. The next item is, this is a time set for a public hearing on the...
Just a minute.
Oh, please.
I'm not sure. I just went to the Soup Bowl, and we had talked in another meeting about doing more for social good. Is that something that we'll talk about? Is that something that'll be added later, or?
Well, there's really not any opportunity now to make any large adjustments to the budget concerning individual, you know,
You do budget, you do have appropriated $7,500 to go to contributions to outside agencies, and there is an application process that comes before you guys.
We've already agreed to that, but it had been reduced from 30,000 to 7,500.
Right.
And that was what the conversation was earlier, that we were perhaps going to look at maybe adding some of that back in. Is that not possible at this point? Or?
I think that, go ahead, Monica.
If that's something that you guys want to do, we can bring it to you at the adopted level, and we can make that adjustment.
As long as it isn't over $5,000?
Yeah, because as long as for that particular fund, it's not over 10%. So you've made an adjustment to the DAs, which is in the general fund, and now this will also be in the general fund. So it depends on how many more adjustments you want to
So
make.
it could only be 10%?
Up to 10%
So $700 is all that can be added to it?
to the general fund?
No, well, to the, I don't,
To the 7,500?
to,
No, there's enough space. 10% of the general fund budget is
10%.
approximately $20 million.
oh, okay. Well, then we should,
Hopefully you're not going over that.
yeah.
So,
Could I just,
I know there's a
please,
lot of good
Commissioner
causes.
Thompson, go right ahead.
you know, I have remarked before on the devotion of staff to fiscal prudence. I'm really all for that. I'm used to very different kinds of budget processes where there's really a full examination, and I noticed the trend this year that we spent more time talking about the budget, which I think is a very positive trend, so that we can fulfill our responsibilities as members of the governing body to really reflect the will of the people here. So what I'm hoping is that we engage in a more extensive budget development process next year, because I think that would be a good opportunity to talk about various concerns that we have. For myself, I would be very interested in having a public input panel. I'd like to have input from the public on a variety of issues, and we have a member of the Lay Budget Committee who's interested in supporting that activity in order that we can have better information going forward. because I think that you're doing your job. I think we could improve our input from the public, and I'd like to see us talk about that. I don't want to derail this budget process, but I'm also very clear that I see big room for improvement. So I'd like to put that out on the table now so that it's clear, in addition to what Commissioner Sullivan is describing. Thank you.
So Commissioner Sullivan, you're requesting that we raise the 7,500 to a different amount? See, we have to be very careful because we don't want to favor one organization over another.
Yeah,
right?
and I understand that's the problem. It's just, you know, such a large portion of our budget goes to law enforcement. And I know that the harbor is doing a wonderful job, and it's very tough on them.
Yeah.
And they serve a lot of citizens in need, like a lot of organizations do. So I don't know what the right answer is, but I know that they were trying to raise 30,000, and they only raised 20,000. And I know that they need the money, so I don't know. I just wondered what this body thought.
Well, I think where this came from is I actually have brought it up several times that there was $30,000 originally, then it was cut to 15, and then it went to 75. This has been over a long period of time, and it stayed at 75 for a while. And so I had asked if we could consider taking it back up to where it was, and that's what started the discussion.
Yeah. My thought is that, you know, we could, this speaks to Commissioner Thompson's request, and I think this, I would like to see on the next budget next year, we could raise that. And I think that, and we could also come up with maybe a more different mechanisms to, you know, because I can think of 5 agencies.
Oh,
Like,
absolutely.
I mean, that,
Absolutely.
there's just like, there's a laundry list.
I'd like to
and,
get kids dental
I hear you
care.
loud and clear, and the reason we had to lower it is because we went through some very difficult fiscal times in 2010. And so I would like to, I think that's a sensible request. But I think right now, where we're at, I think we should focus on the next budget to raise that, you know, and.
May I ask a question?
Go ahead, please.
Thank you. Is it possible to reinstate at least some of that during this current year, rather than waiting a whole year?
If that's what you want to do, yes.
So let's talk about that. So we started out at 30, we went down to 15, now we're at 7,500. Should we raise it to
Yeah,
10, 12? I know, I have the same physical conservatism that Commissioner Thompson does, and so we've gotten ourselves into a good situation with the help of staff and doing excellent budget work. And we have arguably the healthiest rural county budget in the state. And, you know, I think we could go to 10.
And I'd like to see it fully restored myself.
Yeah.
I think the needs are great.
I'm kind of apprehensive to do that at this time, but I think that's a goal. And so maybe by consensus, we could,
Could we develop because I went to the Clatsop Soil and Water District this morning, and they're looking at a loss of funds.
They already have $6,000.
I know they
budgeted
have
in this budget.
$6,000.
Okay.
So
I
thank
just wanted
you
to make
for-
sure that that's not part of that
We
7,500.
knew that,
Okay.
we knew that.
Okay.
On the other hand, they are looking, because of actions at the federal level, which we're all tuned into, they're facing some other shortfalls. And they brought data in this letter that they sent to you about what other counties have done, because we don't have to pay for a weed board, because they are our weed board. So we talked about the impact of increasing marijuana growing in Clatsop County, and who's going to deal with the effects on water quality in rural areas. That's probably going to fall to the Clatsop Soil and Water District. So their workload is looking at increasing while their finances go down. So if we're developing a kind of a bucket list of worthy causes, I mean, if you're looking at that mid-county area, it's a big concern in the rural areas about what's happening with marijuana, and it's going to come to the cities. It's going to come to everywhere in Clatsop County and beyond. So there's a public safety, there's a public health issue. I mean, we've got some worthy causes, and if we're looking at how we could now adjust our budget in order to deal with emerging causes and not have to wait until we're playing catch-up a year from now. So it's the tension, wanting fiscal prudence, but also wanting to meet community needs, because county government exists to meet community needs, to provide services. And people don't care what's in a book, they don't care what's online, they want to know what's happening in my neighborhood to protect my neighborhood livability from things that are going on. So preventative actions can save money in the long term.
Sure.
So just looking at all those.
The other thing that I know the budget committees that I've been on before, the people that are looking for the social service type money, they come and apply to the board of whoever they're talking about. And so that is a bit of a problem at this point,
The way this,
between now and next week.
the way it's been done is through Human Services Board. That's my understanding.
Yeah, I mean, we have a pretty prescribed process that people go through, and it's actually our Human Service Advisory Committee.
Right.
And they have an annual process where they solicit applications, and they have a pretty rigorous review process that they go through. They ultimately come back and make those recommendations to you folks. Just a couple of meetings ago, I think they did that. But if you are interested in increasing and you want to give us some direction, we'll go back and take a look at that for budget. I do feel compelled to just mention a couple of things. One is that, there was a discussion at the Budget Committee. There certainly were at least two Budget Committee members that kind of expressed, it was more of a philosophical question of, is this really the appropriate role for local government? Their point being, they may not make a choice to give their money to this charity, then why does the government get to make a choice to give their money to
That's
that
a
charity?
Yeah, that's exactly right.
And so I think, it's just good to think about this. And then secondly, and I think a couple of you have made, some pretty passionate statements, in favor of some different organizations in the community. If we really get in the business of making a lot available, a lot of money available, I'm sure you will be dealing with hundreds of those kind of requests from throughout the county. So I really think, we want to think carefully about what we're doing and how we do it, because we simply don't have enough money to satisfy everybody's request that might come and ask us.
I think those are good points. And I also think that there's a historic, that's been, what's the word?
Precedent?
It's not really an historic precedent, but this has been going on for a long time through Human Services, and they've handled it very well. And with this, the outcomes, it's pretty well data-driven. It's very good. And that does and even though it may seem like a charity, it actually benefits the whole county. It benefits the population. So I think you can make an argument for that. And they're very careful.
Yeah, to me, one of the best ways, not the only way, but one of the best ways to measure success of that kind of effort is how many complaints we get from people who didn't get funded. And we really don't get complaints from people who didn't get funded. They feel the process was fair. They got a fair analysis, and and so I think that speaks volumes to the work that the Human Service Advisory Committee does, and that they do try to be, very fair and balanced in how they make these decisions.
They really do. Yeah, they are.
So by consensus, can we, throw out the $10,000 figure? Can we have that, raise that up and give direction to staff to bring it forward on the budget adoption?
Are you saying 10,000 more? Or are you saying?
3,000 more. 7 to 10.
2,500 more. It's currently 7,500.
It's a compromise position.
I'd like to ask the county manager what you think is reasonable.
I knew you were going to do
What
that.
can we afford? What is reasonable?
I appreciate you asking. After we had this discussion at the Budget Committee, did go back and do some thinking about that. I would be comfortable going back up to the $15,000 number, where we were at. It's been a few years since we were at that level. So I think that's a little bit more than the number that's being discussed, but I would be comfortable with that.
Do we then have to open it up to, do we just go down the list of people that have already,
You wouldn't, they
Applied, or
would,
what-
no, they
how would
would
we do that?
reapply in the 17-18 year. The monies that you awarded a couple months ago, that was for the 16-17 year. So now for the 17-18 year, you would possibly up it to 15,000. So then when the application process opens up, then that would be the
Oh,
opportunity.
because this is next year's budget?
Yeah.
Yeah, okay.
So, the county manager has suggested 15,000. That doesn't mean we have to spend every penny. We can deliberate on that a bit.
Could we do that? Could we hold the higher limit in total, not expend all of it now, and then do a more thoughtful process to look at all the needs? Because I'm really sympathetic to the cause, totally sympathetic. And for the budget committee members who had concerns, maybe they should have been approached to make individual donations, but
I disagree. I
Yeah.
think that we should let the human services, they have
Yeah.
a history of handling it very well. They're very experienced. They're highly qualified to do this. They know the needs. And I would,
so you want to refer it back to them?
I do.
So okay,
We
so
eventually are the final.
we
side.
eventually sign off. My only point is we have a higher ceiling, but we are not expending all of it right now. We're not approving the expending of up to the total limit right now, or we are?
Well,
Please
so you're
clarify.
increasing the amount possibly to 15,000. And so then whether or not you expend all of that would depend on the applications that come into the Human Advisory Council. And then when they come before you proposing who they want to distribute the grants to, then if you disagree with any of their suggestions, then you would perhaps not distribute the full
So
amount.
it's the larger "we" that's responsible.
But again, I also think realistically, last year, this year really, it was a couple months ago, there was $7,500. There was probably $30,000 worth of requests.
I'm sure he's lying.
If you bump this up to $15,000, I'm sure there'll be at least $30,000 worth of requests. So unless you're talking about hundreds of thousands of dollars, I think you should probably count on the fact that, if it's a relatively modest amount of money, like $15,000, somebody's going to want every penny of it.
Sure.
And more.
You're the, Commissioner Nebeker, you're the liaison, and so you have a voice there. And so, yeah, I have no problem with raising it to 15. I know,
Okay.
okay, so, okay, fair enough. So I think staff has direction on that. So is there any other comments or deliberations concerning that issue?
Not that issue.
It's a tough one because there's so much of a need and that's up to the human services. Those are tough decisions and
Very
I
tough.
value their input and that's part of that public input that we so value.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's move on. This is item B. This is the time set for the public hearing on fiscal year 2017-18 4-H and Extension Service District budget. May I have the staff report, please?
The Clatsop County 4-H and Extension Special Service District Budget Committee approved the district's 17-18 annual budget in accordance with Oregon's budget law, ORS 294.453. The next step is for the board to hold a public hearing on the approved budget. The purpose of this hearing is to consider testimony from any and all persons who may wish to comment on the approved budget. No action by the board is required at this time. The 17-18 approved budget for Clatsop County 4-H and Extension Special Service District totals $726,600. Staff recommends that the board hold the public hearing on the 17-18 approved 4-H and Extension District budget to consider testimony from any and all persons who may wish to comment pursuant to ORS 294.453.
Thank you. Is there any public testimony? I see we have the director, Mr. Cochran. Would you like to say anything to speak to the 4-H and Extension Service District budget?
Just that we look forward to another wonderful year and we're coming up with Betty Meter on Saturday at Fair Week.
Fair enough, thank you.
Woo-hoo.
Is there any public testimony? Seeing no public testimony, I will close the budget hearing, and the budget adoption is scheduled for June 28th. This is the time set for a public hearing on the fiscal year 2017-18 Rural Law Enforcement District budget. May I have the staff report, please?
Clatsop County Rural Law Enforcement District Budget Committee approved the district's 17-18 annual budget in accordance with budget law, ORS 294.453. The next step in the process is for the board to hold the public hearing. The purpose of this hearing is to consider testimony from any and all persons. No action is required by the board. The 17-18 approved budget for the Clatsop County Rural Law Enforcement District totals $4,726,530, which includes an unappropriated ending fund balance of $1,469,740. The board has approved expenditure authority in the amount of $3,256,790. Staff recommends that the board hold the public hearing on the 17-18 approved rural law enforcement district budget to consider testimony from any and all persons who may wish to make comment pursuant to ORS 294.453.
Thank you. Is there any public testimony? I see Commander Phillips is here. Were you here to speak to the rural law enforcement district issue, or?
In case there's any questions, yes, I'm sure I'll be available.
Okay.
Nothing specific to add.
All right, thank you. See no further public testimony, I will close the public hearing, and budget adoption is scheduled for June 28th. Next up is this is a time set for public hearing on the fiscal year 2017-18 Road District Number 1 budget. May I have the staff report, please?
Clatsop County Road District Number 1 Budget Committee approved the 17-18 annual budget in accordance with ORS 294.453. The purpose of this hearing is to consider testimony from any and all persons who wish to make comment. No action is required by the board. The 17-18 approved budget for the Clatsop County Road District Number 1 totals $4,524,270. Staff recommends that the board hold the public hearing on the 17-18 approved Road District Number 1 budget to consider testimony from any and all persons pursuant to ORS 294.453.
Thank you for that report. Is there any public testimony tonight? See no public testimony, I will close the public hearing. Budget adoption is scheduled for June 28th. And the final special district, this is the time set for the public hearing on fiscal year 2017 Westport Sewer Service District budget. May I have the staff report, please?
Westport Sewer Service District Budget Committee approved the 17-18 annual budget in accordance with ORS 294.453. The next step in the process is to hold the public hearing. The purpose of this hearing is to consider testimony from any and all persons who may wish to comment. No action is required by the board at this time. The 17-18 approved budget for the Westport Sewer Service District totals $197,380. Staff recommends that the board hold the public hearing on the 17-18 approved Westport Sewer Service District budget to consider testimony from any and all persons who may wish to make comment pursuant to ORS 294.453.
Thank you for the staff report. Is there any public testimony? Seeing no public testimony, I will close the public hearing. Budget adoption is scheduled for June 28th.
Hope you're feeling better, Monica.
Yeah.
That concludes public hearings tonight. And next, we're going to move on to the business agenda. Item 7A, approved contract with Seaside Temps for fiscal year 17-18 with various departments. Page 243. Good evening. May I have the staff report, please?
Sure. Good evening, Commissioners. My name is Robin Coach, Director of Human Resources and Risk Management. The issue I present before you this evening is a request to approve the contract agreements with Seaside Temps for temporary employment services for various county departments for a combined corrected amount of $69,000 for the period of July 1, 2017 through June 30, 2018. I'd be happy to answer any questions you may have. Thank you.
So 69,000,
Mr. Chair?
Correct.
Please.
There's a corrected amount.
73. Oh, it's
There's
not-
3 contracts there, and the first contract
Oh,
is for,
yes, that's right, okay,
so it's a corrected amount.
thank you.
I'd just like to ask about a couple things here. I've worked with Seaside Temps before in different capacities. And with all temporary agencies, the reason that we're doing this is that we can get help, we can get staff temporarily and not pay the benefits, correct?
That's not the primary reason. The primary reason is we have intermittent projects that don't warrant us bringing somebody on for a longer period of time. They allow us to get short-term, immediate project help is really the primary reason. There might be an unexpected event such as a leave of absence that might require that we temporarily backfill a position, but we don't officially fill that position. So it really varies. Those are two main reasons for hiring temporary staff.
I guess my main question is that I know that when I've worked for temp agencies, I might be bringing home $10 an hour, but the agency is bringing home $18 an hour. So how is that determined, and is that causing a problem? Like, my understanding, the animal shelter, you know, I mean, I think the days, you know, $12 an hour is I mean, when they're asking for $15 an hour for McDonald's workers, is that something we as a county are trying to do to get our temp workers a little higher wage, since rents are gone up, everything has gone up here? Is that something that's figured into this, or?
It is, and it's very common within this temporary staffing industry to have an overhead of, usually our average is about 30%. And I know that in our animal shelter in particular, they did raise the rate that they wanted to pay temporary staff, so that raised the overhead rate as well.
Because I heard the rate out there was $12 an hour. And I mean, they did a tremendous job with recently the cat hoarder, and it's tough work. It's very tough work, and I would just like to see them compensated in a way that's a little bit better. Is that something that, when you said they raised it, what did they raise it to?
Well, is Matt still here? Matt, are you able to speak to that in particular on the animal shelter?
It's a staggered amount, and the reason that they were doing it is because they have a significant amount of turnover, because it's really hard to get people to stay.
Exactly, it's hard work.
And there's a significant amount of training that's involved
Right.
as well. And so to encourage people to stay, you know, they hire them at a rate, and then if they have been there, you know, for a longer amount of time, then they increase that rate more frequently. I don't know the bottom and the top, I don't know what those are, but they did make changes to try and encourage workers to stay consistent.
Does this budget allow for them to start at 15? I mean, do we know what the starting rate is? I know what the starting rate is at my work, so I
I don't know the contracted rates, but this contract has those negotiated rates in it for 17, 18.
And Robin, do you feel that's adequate, or do you feel that's adequate, that's what's going on out there?
I think I heard the top rate was as high as $19 an hour.
Not bad, I mean, it's,
And again, there are steps.
and there are different jobs within, that are involved with this, too. They're not just not working,
Protracted periods of time.
right.
It's mainly for the kennel workers, because we do have staff out there who are county staff.
And we have some very dedicated volunteers.
Yes, we have, and that's what helps make the animal shelter affordable for us to be able to do, is the significant amount of volunteer work.
Well, I just would like to make sure that those people are compensated in an adequate way.
Any other questions?
No, that was my concern.
Thank you for the staff report, and I have just for you.
Great, thank you.
So if there's, looking for a motion?
Mr. Chair, I move to approve the 2017-2018 agreement with Seaside Temps for temporary employment services for various county departments.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to approve the 2017-18 agreement with Seaside Temps for temporary employment services for various county departments. Is there any further deliberations? Yeah, I'd like to echo some of Commissioner Sullivan's. I think that that we want to make sure that these people are compensated in a fair way. And that being said, is there any further deliberations?
Could I
Seeing no
have,
Yes, go right ahead.
well, there's Robin. Hi, Robin. How do we decide when it's better to have a permanent employee than a temporary staffer? Because there's a big chunk that goes out, and if we've got an ongoing need, which it appears that we have,
We watch that, Chief Deputy Williams monitors that very closely, because if you hire staff, there's vacation time involved, and so that you're hiring a significant more number of staff to be able to cover the time off. So we have to see, if we have temporary help, we can just call them in when we need them to come in. If you have full-time staff, then you're gonna have them on, and then there may be vacation days, and so because it's essentially a 6-day 3-day-a-week operation. And so as far as the days off, so he constantly is monitoring that. And I know it's something that the union also keeps track of because they want to make sure that their union employees are being fairly represented. But it is a difficult balance because it's not a big revenue maker. And so being able to provide the services that we are providing in a cost-effective manner.
So we're going to pay one way or pay the other, but if we've got Debbie Booth Smith and Paul Williams on either side of us, I think I can depend on those two pillars of righteousness. So thank you.
Okay. Fair enough. We have a motion and a second. Seeing no further deliberations, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Our next item is item 7B, recategorization of certain county-owned properties, page 259. Good evening. May I have the staff report,
Evening,
please?
Chair Lee and
Yeah,
members of the board.
maybe, Serp, if I could just give a little lead into this, just to remind the commissioners, every year, but last year in 16, we acquired a number of properties. Oftentimes, they're not particularly usable or valuable, but we did happen to acquire a property in the Alderbrook neighborhood that was suggested, I think, by Commissioner Sullivan that might be usable. And so that's kind of where we're at. I'll just kind of let Serpa take it from there, but we did investigate and, we think we have a plan. So
the plan that we are proposing this evening is this parcel is the property in Alderbrook that is at 411 51st Street, and the city has deemed it as one of their 5 worst code violations. We originally categorized it for auction, and then the plan came forth to have some other options, and we pulled it from the auction. So I am here tonight to ask for recategorization into other government, specifically low-income housing. And also to set a date for a public hearing to take comment on the transfer from Clatsop, or from Community Action Team, Inc. They are a nonprofit, and ORS 271-330 does allow counties to transfer tax foreclosed parcels for low-income housing. And Clatsop Community Action Team, Inc. is a qualifying nonprofit organization, and they will present their plan and their offer at the public hearing on June 28th, and what their plans are for this. When we did foreclose on this for delinquent taxes, in addition to the tax foreclosed unpaid taxes, which was $21,621, we also had to pay the senior deferral lien, which by law was due when county took deed, and that amount was $26,548. Just to let you know that we have taken a loss from the taxing districts for $48,169.81. So in order to move forward, we do need to recategorize this for low-income housing, and then to set the hearing date for June 28th to move forward with this proposal.
Mr. Chair, may I?
Please.
I had an occasion to speak with Elaine Bruce this afternoon, and we were discussing this property. And she said, the Community Action Team is expert in this, and they're going to come in. They were thinking that maybe it will be used for seed money. Even if it isn't low-income housing for itself, it can be rehabilitated and then sold, and the money, the proceeds from it, turned into more money for low-income housing. So if it may be indirect more than exactly direct, but still a better use of the property and a way to improve low-income housing in Clatsop County.
And improve the neighborhood.
And
If we were to put this on the market, Serpa, what would be our asking price? Or if it went to auction, what would be the minimum bid?
I think that was somewhere around 75, 80,000.
No,
when we were looking at taking
No, I
it to
think
auction?
it was less.
Suzanne?
So,
It was, how we came up with the minimum bid for this particular property was, this is on a substandard lot, and in order to rebuild anything, and this would be the same requirements for whoever, pays up the property, but they have to leave 20% there, they can't tear it completely down because of the substandard lot. So, we came up with the value for the land and really no value for the structure, except for that 20%. So we just took what we had on the roll, 20% of that, came up with the value for the land, and trying to keep it, following our ordinance where we try not to sell for less than the tax delinquency. So I think, Cam, we had it at about 60,000. That's my memory, but
yeah, I think the minimum bid we had on was quite a bit higher, but we'd have to go back and look at it, so.
maybe, do you have that?
I don't have that, but what we came up with, the appraiser looking at the 20% of the fair market value of the land, together with the salvage value of the improvement, she came up with $38,375 as the real market value, as it stands.
$38,000 is
Yes.
assessed market value?
Yes.
Yeah, and I do want to share with the board, because I've been the one having the conversations with the community action team, SERPA kind of processing the transaction. So I made them aware early on, and SERPA shared these numbers with you, but there's a little bit over 21,000, almost 22,000 in back taxes on this, and then this senior deferral that the county also had to pay. When we got the property is about 26.5. The total on that's about $48,000. What I have discussed up to this point with the community action team is looking at something where we would get back that senior deferral, which is $26,548. You know, that still gives them a pretty good deal on this property and an opportunity to do something with it. If we want to do something different than that, if we're looking at a market value, or, we want to get, that entire 48,169, if you could give me some direction on that now, so I can let them know that for their planning purposes.
I did locate the minimum bid we had. It was $38,500. So it wasn't the full amount.
And I know that the different properties that we have changed hands, I don't know what the term is for it. Sometimes there's a much greater difference in what the possible value is and what it's being given to this person because it's next to them or whatever. I mean, this is across the board that there's gaps between what the market value is and what the value is to whoever's getting it. I don't think this is special in that way. In fact, it seems like a good deal for them.
So what is the plan? What are they going to do with it?
Well, they, at least as of a couple days ago when I talked to them, they hadn't made a final decision yet. They have been in the home. They've done some analysis. One of the options is, in fact, I think, as Commissioner Thompson mentioned, I mean, if they feel the highest and best use of the property, the most value of that is to rehab it into a single-family home and sell it to someone at a market price so they can use that money somewhere else, they might do that. They haven't made that decision yet. Because the other thing they're looking at is the character of the neighborhood, and it does could it be a boarding house or something like that would serve low-income folks, and so they haven't quite made that decision yet, but I suspect that they will pretty soon, because the discussion I've had with them is we'll be looking hopefully to transfer title to them pretty soon, like after our next meeting, maybe July sometime.
And there's a lot of work to be done on the house.
Yeah.
So is there any commitment that we know of, or signed agreement, that this money that they will receive will go towards low-income housing? Or where will that money go?
Yeah, I mean, that would be part of the, first of all, it's part of the reclassification that we're doing, and it would be part of our agreement with them, and they already understand that, and that's what their intent is to do. They've done 2 projects like this in Columbia County, and in one case, they said they rehabbed the house, kept it and rented it out to a low-income family. They said in the other case, we rehabbed the house, we sold it because it had a lot of market value, and we used that money, then to support low-income housing in the community.
Okay. To support low-income housing in what way? How is that?
Well, they might either buy or build some low-income
Oh,
housing.
okay, so it
someplace else.
will go towards creating
Yeah.
more,
Right.
not just
Or if
funding what already
I mean, there's all kinds of
exists.
programs available. I mean, if there's properties available, there's rent subsidy programs, that can help people afford to get into a decent place to live. So, those are some options, I know that they're going to look at, but their intent here is to build and own some low-income housing. It's just a case of whether this particular property makes the most sense for that, or it makes more sense to take the money and put it in some property somewhere else in the community.
Okay.
So just for my clarification, so basically if we go forward with this and recategorize it, how much are we going to lose potentially?
Well, yeah, my thought process here was the county actually had to pay the state $26,548.16. So that's money we spent. So what I've said to them is, we'd like to get that back. What we would forego then is $21,621.65 in back taxes. So this is income owed to the county and other taxing districts, which we would not get.
But once the house is up and running, we would start getting taxes, which we have not gotten in 7 years.
That's correct.
And that's part of their thought is if they do end up selling this, it's going to generate some pretty good tax revenue for the county.
And we have a minimum bid right now of 38. Is that what you said? That's the minimum bid starting point?
That was the proposed, when we brought it to you in March for an auction.
Okay, and
Yeah.
so, it is rare, so it's kind of, yeah. Okay.
I understand it's a view property and likely to, once rehabilitated, to command a good market price. So I think Commissioner Sullivan is right when she says we're going to end up making more money on this, one way or another.
Okay. Mike, do you want to make the motion?
Sure, I'll make the
Yeah.
proposal.
Since
I move that the board recategorize this parcel of low-income housing for low-income housing and set date for public hearing on transfer to a nonprofit for June 28th, 2017.
Second.
We have a motion and a second to recategorize this property for low-income housing or other government, set a date for the public hearing on June 28th, 2017. Seeing no further deliberations, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for the staff report.
Thank you, Serpa.
Good job. Our next item is the approve the 2016-17 budget and appropriation adjustments, 269.
Good evening.
Good evening. Thank you. May I have the staff report, please?
Before you is an R&O required by ORS 294.463 for budget adjustments for fiscal year 16-17. These adjustments are a precaution or to avoid being in violation of budget law. The potential fiscal impact is $0 as these adjustments are within funds that either have adequate budgeted contingency, and therefore the adjustment is for appropriation authority only, have offsetting revenue, or have adequate budget authority. However, per local budget law, the adjustment must be made to be spent between categories. The proposed adjustment reduces the general fund contingency by $18,000 and the general fair operations contingency by $75,000. Should all adjusted appropriation authority go unused, the unused funds will roll into the 17-18 beginning balance. The need for the budget adjustment is further explained in the attached Schedule A.
Thank you for the staff report. Fairly straightforward here.
Mr. Chair, I do have a couple of questions. It seems heartless to ask you to speak more, but, sorry. tell me the M schedule, is that the reward, the bonus for the
The M schedule
managerial?
is the management schedule that was a result of the compensation and classification study. Some of the, excuse me, we had to figure out a way to begin implementing it. And so there was any staff whose anniversary date, management staff whose anniversary date was between January 1st and June 30th got moved to the M schedule, because that was the next, if they were going to be receiving a step increase, rather than moving them to one and then moving them to another. So if their anniversary date was between January and June, they moved to the M schedule, and now they, excuse me, their new anniversary date is being readjusted to July 1. So they will not be receiving another step, if they're eligible for another step, until July 1, 2018. Does that make sense?
So it's a cost now, but it's more of a savings later on.
So they won't,
Sure. $75,000 seems like quite a bit of overtime, and I
that's-
apologize if I already heard this. Please remind me.
The $75,000 that the fair is doing, that is, they, excuse me, they have the budgeted contingency. They have approximately $730,000 in budgeted contingency, and $50,000 of that is to go towards a structure that they're building.
Oh, yes.
And then $25,000 of that is, there's been significant turnover out at the fair, and in trying to find employees, as well as in the interim having to use Seaside temps, they have increased their costs. So the $75,000 isn't all overtime.
Got it. Okay. And the $50,000, do we know yet if they've got that solar on the roof? No, I don't expect you to know that. Kidding. Thank you.
Yeah.
Thank you for the staff report. Seeing that there's really no other options to consider here, I'll look for a motion.
I move that the board approve the year-end budget adjustments to remain in compliance with Oregon budget law per ORS 294463.
Second.
I have a motion and a second to move that the board approve the year-end budget adjustments to remain in compliance with Oregon budget law per ORS 294463. Seeing no further deliberations, all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Our next item is the item 7D, the preschool feasibility study intermediary contract, page 273. Good evening, Mr. Gaffney.
Hi.
We're going to have a presentation by the county manager, and Mr. Gaffney, who wants to go first?
Go ahead, Dan.
All right. I'll just quickly indicate that we did I think, a very thorough process of seeking an intermediary to guide us through this preschool feasibility study. Just a quick rundown. On April 11th, we published an RFP. We published that in the Daily Journal of Commerce. We put it on the county website. We sent it to 4 known firms that have extensive experience in Pay for Success and other unique funding models. In our RFP, we said we wanted a very experienced firm who had experience from feasibility study all the way through funding and evaluation, so that if we got beyond feasibility study, we would be in good hands with a good firm to do that. There's actually, there were 4 firms that we knew had significant experience. It turns out that one of those didn't have that full breadth of experience. We sent the RFP directly to all 4 firms, and those were due on May 3rd. Monica Steele and I opened those that arrived on May 4th, and we had 2 RFPs. The one of the, I'll say, big 3 had contacted me a couple of times during the time that the RFP was publicized and before it was due, once with some questions, and then about 3 days beforehand, indicated that they were already working with 3 of the grantees, 3 of the 8 that the U.S. Department of Education had awarded money to. So they didn't feel like they could submit a good proposal given their staffing. We got 2 very good proposals. I had a review team go through, and we spent a significant number of hours going through scoring the proposals. They then conducted interviews with those 2 firms that had submitted proposals, asking specific questions that were in common, but also some that were unique to their proposals to seek clarification. Also obtained a list of references from each of those firms and contacted multiple references for each of those firms. And that led me to write a letter of recommendation to County Manager Moore to work a contract out with Social Finance. I'll just kind of pause there if there's any questions about the process that I went through.
I do have a number of questions for you, Dan, but I don't know if I should do them now or later, so.
I do as well, so I don't know if it's now or maybe.
Yeah, I don't have any specific questions concerning the process. It seems like there's a narrow band of expertise here available.
Yes.
The one, there was the Social Finance, and what was the other organization that would have potential?
Sorensen Impact Center?
Sorensen Impact Center. Yeah.
What I can do is I can indicate very briefly.
We'll go ahead and have you continue, because I know
Sure.
the other commissioners have more questions.
Just real brief, the things that I indicated to County Manager Moore is that part of the reason to recommend Social Finance is because in doing the reference checks, one of the things that was clear to me was that Social Finance, in working with these other projects, was not focused solely on pay for success, that they were open to other models of financing. And it was based upon the feasibility study and what the community was ready for, because it made no sense to try to push something that the community did not want. And so that was really clear. The other thing is that one of the things we asked for was an indication of the background of the team that each of these firms would provide and the amount of time that they would be committed to our project. And what I felt was that Social Finance brought a team that had more longevity with Social Finance, and 3 of the 4 members, they were committing 30 to 40% of those individual staff members' time to our project, whereas the other firm was not committing that many people with that percentage of time. So experience was a factor. The amount of dedicated time I felt was going to be a stronger team for us. So number one was, were they, based upon the references, were they pushing pay for success, or were they experienced with pay for success and open to others? Then the experience and the amount of time with that dedicated time or dedicated staff to our project was another big factor. So those were, I really think, the 2 big things that that led me to make the recommendation that I did. Both firms were under the budgeted amount, and so that was not a huge factor, and there was not a great difference between the 2 firm proposals.
So you mentioned something that Social Finance, that as far as pay for success, it was, the concern that I have is like basically they're just going to rubber stamp pay for success program and facilitate that, but you're saying that they're going to provide a more broader analysis.
Both would do that. What I learned from the references that I talked to, and I was really appreciative of the candor of those references as provided by both Sorensen and Social Finance. I asked some very specific questions about were they open to, other funding models, or were they really focused on pay for success? And the summation of the comments that I got was that Sorensen was very, very open, Social Finance was very, very open to other kinds of things, and that was written into their proposal as well, very clearly. The other thing, just a general feeling that I think came from the team as the proposals were read. So before any interview and before the reference checks, the impression that I'll say is the majority of the screening team got was that there was a little different approach. Sorensen Impact was going to build capacity within our community to be aware of social finance and how we could use that in the future. Whereas felt like there was going to be more boots on the ground, so to speak, from social finance and help us get through the feasibility study and then determine if pay for success was the approach to take or whether there was another model to approach.
Okay.
And so that was an initial impression, and that kind of led me to the kinds of questions that I asked them during the interviews as well.
Well, I appreciate that because, and I thank you for addressing that because as you know that you've learned from this board that we had some and still have serious concerns about, and I think you'll probably hear some more of that tonight. And so I appreciate that taking our concerns.
Absolutely.
And I really appreciate that. And so I'm pleased to hear that. That being said.
And I mean that in all seriousness, that your concerns are my concerns too, because I'm here to serve our community.
Right.
And see if we can gather the information that then local people will decide upon whether we move forward with anything or not. There is nothing that says we will move forward with any financing program. We're simply gathering the information to see if it's feasible to move forward. There is no wealth of information in any one spot right now to give us the kind of information that this study will give us. And Social Finance would be, I think, the firm that would best guide us through that process.
Okay, well, thank you for that report.
Welcome.
I know the commissioners have some questions for you, and so Commissioner Neviker?
Sure, I'll go. So you said, I was happy to hear what you said about that they would look for other possibilities, but what types of other possibilities?
I believe I've got some in my notes here. That's why I brought my little bag here. They talked about scaling up services. So what one of the references that they gave me talked about was that rather than going with a great big huge implementation that Pay for Success would or wouldn't pay for, they piloted a smaller project to see if their plan that was created during the feasibility study was effective. And if it was effective, then that could be used as a model to expand at 2 or 3, 4 or 5 years down the road. And that's the interesting thing that I learned in talking with some of the references, is that they are very much into this in a multi-year process. The feasibility study is only the first step and there's no guarantee that anything's going to happen in year 2. We're going to learn things from year 1, from the feasibility study, that will help us make decisions about, do we move forward? How quickly do we move forward? Do we have the capacity to move forward? Those are all things that go into that feasibility study.
So how long will this company be involved if
The contract.
if this idea of the scale-up model is accepted? And
The contract would have them committed to 10 months for the remainder.
Would be doing the scale up. How would that-
Then we would be seeking other funds to move forward in doing that scaling up. And again, some of this, we have no idea who would do that because we don't know what's to be done yet.
Okay.
And that's, again, the reason for doing the feasibility is we're really digging down in the dirt to get what are the basic, what basically do we have? What do we need? Part of what we're also doing is looking at, you know, what are the details of a truly effective program? And so we're doing literature research on effective programs, and then we'll share that with local folks and say, is this something that we can do? Is this something we want to do? And we will figure out a cost analysis for what that would cost, and also the cost benefit in terms of if it's going to cost us this much, how much benefit are we going to get out of it?
Okay. So when you say local folks, you're talking about the school boards?
It would be, primarily it's going to be government officials, so school officials and school boards, you folks, it could be city councils, any government entity that wants to be a part of investing in our kids, in our future.
Okay. First of all, and I know we all agree on this, we're all absolutely 100% behind quality preschool. We know this is a good thing. It could be that I wasn't listening. It could be
There's a lot going on.
it could be that, you know, I had a lack of understanding, but when we first were presented with this, I didn't really understand that this was a mechanism for a social impact bond or pay for success. And that could be my fault, but I realize now that's exactly what this is. This is a feasibility study for that. And I've received some calls, and so I've had some concerns because it isn't just a feasibility study to see if we need preschool. It's more than that. And yet, at the same time, one of the people that I had communication with was a superintendent who does want to have this feasibility study done, but they do not want strings attached.
And that's the beauty, is that nobody's going to be forcing anybody to implement any of the recommendations that come out of this feasibility study.
Yeah,
That's clear.
I hope that this doesn't come out that this is the only way. You've got to go that way. You've got to do the pay for success. You've got to have the social impact bond. I really hope that is not what this ends up with,
I fully agree with you.
because it will seem suspect, I think.
Absolutely. And we don't need another cloud over
Right.
what we're trying to do.
Yeah, we want to be open and transparent.
Absolutely.
In all ways. We want the public to know, that's what this is how this was intended. But now, we have possibly a company that is going to offer other options.
Yes. And again, those are all options. It's the local people that will make a decision whether we follow any of those suggestions or not. What we will be gaining because of the grant money that's provided into Clatsop and Tillamook County is we're going to gather a lot of information about what's a high-quality preschool, how can we provide transportation for these kids, how can we pay teachers at a rate that, you know, you talked about a good wage for temporary workers. I would advocate that we need to have a good wage for our preschool providers. So again, these are all intended to be information gathering process so that we can make informed decisions about where do we put our priorities, and can we go outside to find some money to fund our program, the program that our local people want. And if not, it's not going to happen.
I'm sure you know, you've heard, the the big scandals about the government-private partnership about affordable housing, and how, that, now maybe mostly it's very good, and we just hear about what is really troubling. I don't know. But I think people are really aware of this, and they don't want in any way for government money to be set aside to pay for any kind of private company that they're benefiting from this because there's a partnership.
Right. No, and again, that's why we really wanted an experienced firm in this whose references I could call. And it was interesting because they gave me a list of 5 references, and yet during the conversations, during the interview, I would hear about another project that they were a part of, and one of the projects I called was not on their list of 5, but someone else so it wasn't on their prepared list of 5, because we could all put together the best 5 references and not really get the dirt, not really get the details. And they were very free with that, and the people, like I said, the references I called, they were absolutely transparent, and again, they have no reason not to be.
Yeah, and I also think, just because I think it's relevant to this part of the discussion, that, and those of you that haven't dealt with this aren't familiar with it, but under the IRS code, there's all kinds of different nonprofits, some of which are actually business organizations, but they can qualify as a nonprofit. This group is a 501c3 nonprofit. They're a charity. To become a C3, I mean, that's Red Cross, people like that. So this is not even a nonprofit. Like a C6, for instance, would be more of like a business association, a chamber of commerce, something like that. I've worked with a lot of nonprofits. So that's comforting to me as well to know that they've incorporated essentially under the charitable section of the IRS nonprofit code.
It's good to know.
Thank you. I think those are great questions. Dan, I have a number of questions for you.
Okay.
So it looked like a sole source contract, but you said that you had sent it out and you got 4 responses and...
Actually, we got 2 written proposals.
And then a phone call that said that they weren't able because they were too busy.
Right.
And who were the 2 that were remaining?
Social Finance and Sorensen Impact Center.
Is that why it seems like in this paper they're working together already?
Yeah, and I knew this was going to come up a little bit. Sorensen Impact Center is part of the business department at University of Utah. They have kind of 2 entities within there, and they assured me when the RFP went out for the intermediary that there's a firewall between these 2 portions of Sorensen Impact Center. The one group that we're already working with is the
Way to Wellville, you mean?
No, as a part of this group, as part of this project, once we got this grant from the U.S. Department of Ed, we became aware of another grant that would provide us not with money, but with data scientists who would help us in...
Intermediary, I can't say that word, but...
Right. So we applied for and got that grant. So we have 3 data scientists who are already working with us.
Is that the $30,000 that we approved earlier on?
No, there was no money.
There was an assistant or somebody that helped you?
We are in the process of hiring that person. No, this is...
That's a different $30,000. Or was it about $30,000?
The data project is an entirely different grant that was available only to projects dealing with pay for success. But what they provide, what they cost us is no dollars. What they give us is no dollars. What we give them is in-kind time of the people that are working with me as I collect data. Okay, so like we had a meeting, we had folks from the ESD, we had folks from Department of Human Services, we had folks from one of our hospitals, we We had folks from...
Those are the Way to Wellville people, aren't they?
No.
No, they're separate from that? Okay.
Yeah. Way to Wellville is involved in a supportive way. They are not directing anything. They are helping in providing space and resources, that type of thing.
Okay. I'd just like to go back for a minute on, is it Social Incorporated, right? Is that the name of it? Social Finance Incorporated. When I looked on, it's either them or Sorensen, which was the original Pay for Success company. It's what I saw on the internet. Is that true, or is that what you saw, that they were one of the original companies?
Social Finance was
Social
one of
Finance?
the first ones, yes.
Yeah, so they should be very familiar with this model.
They've done like 40 different projects already.
And they're out there in the finance capital of the world, out near New York.
Their
They're out
home
of
base
Massachusetts.
is Boston, but they just opened up one in San Francisco and one in Texas. I can't remember what the
Because
city.
I just think it's unfortunate in the land of Intel and Google that we don't have a local company that can handle the data. If that's what this is for, really to just look for data.
It's not just data, though. It's also
Data
help.
that can be fed into a Pay for Success system.
Right. It's more complex than just finding data, though.
Mm-hmm.
And that's where they will help us in figuring out what kind of data and to collect. And then our second grant, our supportive grant with the data scientists, they will help us. They will partner.
Mm-hmm.
So the data scientists of Sorensen Impact Center have worked with the intermediaries of social finance in the past.
Yeah, because it sounded like in the information that they were happy to be working together.
Yeah.
That they felt confident working with each other.
Right. Yes. It's a small group that, they interact a lot, and I
Well, this is a
think
relatively new field, isn't it? A new way.
it is a
to
very
do
new
it.
field, yes.
Yeah. I guess the other thing too is when we first started talking about this, we had a lot of talk about children and what we were going to do for children, but when I'm reading the staff report, mostly the words that stick out to me are innovative financing tools, direct capital, transaction structuring, raising capital. It's all financial terms. I'm not hearing a lot about kids on these.
What they are,
High finance model, aggregate analysis, return on investment,
'cause
transaction assessment, calculating estimated need. I mean, these are all outcomes, the payers.
that's the expertise that they bring. They have worked with other early childhood specialists in the past. That's who we want to work with here locally to help determine what are those needs
I guess part of my
and then how
concern
to
is.
finance that.
Right, and part of my concern is that we had also talked originally about what is this going to cost the county? And I know on our May 10th, I unfortunately did not remove it from the consent calendar, but there was, I think, a $35,000 set of money set aside to buy the, it used to be Pocket Full of Feelings, but it's now called Tots to Teens or something like that. It's the booklets that go along with this program, is that correct? And it was required by this grant to get that particular program. That was my understanding of that.
Yeah, and that's.
That's what I read. I know
That's not-
Monica's shaking her head, but that, when I read into that, they said these are required materials for that. Am I wrong about that? I mean, we can go back and look it up.
I have no idea what you're talking about.
Okay.
I don't either.
Draw down the funds on this.
Right.
And we've only drawn down $25,000 and none of it.
I'm not sure what the amount of money that,
Everything that has been drawn down has been associated directly with the work that Dan is doing.
right, I'm just,
Well,
I'm more
actually,
concerned that we were told that they were not going to have required materials, and here, we already approved it. It's-
In this
it's already
project,
water-
there are no required materials.
There are no required.
Well,
Absolutely
it
none.
seems kind of, it just seems, I think this whole piece just seems
The
kind of
pocket-
large and
The pocket full of
unwieldy.
feelings, and that is something entirely
Who's
separate.
using that? That's an early, nobody seems to remember that. Remember, you
Well,
had talked
no,
about
I can-
pocket full of feelings.
I-
I'll be happy to look that
We
up.
were using it in Champaign County Head Start before I came here.
And I can say that
But it was required as part of
Through-
that funding.
through Northwest Parenting, Pocket Full of Feelings has been distributed in the county 2 early childhood providers and some primary grade teachers as well. So,
But oh yeah, that's right, it was through the juvenile department, and it was through the Way to Wellville, correct?
Correct.
Which I found out about on the internet, because it wasn't in the staff documents.
and Commissioner, I'll also say that Way to Wellville was supportive of that as well. Way to Wellville
I'm sure they
bought some of those materials that were then distributed by the juvenile department.
Okay, so this particular study that you're working on is not requiring us to buy materials, is
Absolutely
that
not.
right?
No.
And also in here, they talk about there's many things here, but one of them is the working group and steering group, that there'll be the project director, maybe this is what you've already talked about, the community resources assistant from the county director, associate director and associate from this finance team, key staff, county staff. Who, are these volunteer positions, or is the county paying for them to be part of this team?
County's not paying anybody to be a part of the team.
But it asks
other
throughout
than-
this that it's going to be rely on the data that's coming from the county and the schools.
Okay.
Who is doing that?
County's contracting me.
Okay.
And the assistant that we're looking to hire to facilitate the gathering of that data.
Mm-hmm.
And that data will come from school districts, from child care resource referral, from
So you're going
preschool
into the school
providers.
districts and getting the data yourself, or who's going to be?
Or I'm going to the internet to gather that.
Mm-hmm.
I have assembled, and I mentioned this, I believe, last time I was here, is I've now assembled an advisory committee, which will serve as the steering committee that social
So that's
finance talks
volunteer.
about. Those are volunteers. I've got medical representatives, educational representatives, county representatives. Again, I'm asking for 1 hour a month for their time. Now, as social finance gets involved, they're going to be looking at additional, but again, I don't expect all 14 people that are on my advisory committee to be active members of this steering committee, as they refer to it.
And what about the traveling, that the entire team would travel?
That comes out of their contracted amount, the $210,000 that is in the contract.
But I mean, when they're talking about the entire team, are they talking about the Social Finance Incorporated, or
The team
the
of
county
four,
people?
the team of 4 from social finance is when they're talking about the entire team.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, and they plan to come out at least 3 times. For a kickoff event, for an intermediate event, and then a wrap-up event. We will also see other members of the team, multiple members of the team, so 2 or 3 people at a time coming out, 4 or 5 or 6 times beyond those 3 times.
So out of that 210, some of that's going to go from traveling from
Absolutely.
Massachusetts out here.
Yes,
Yeah, so that'll add to the cost, I
Yes.
imagine. Now, I haven't seen a budget. Now, Monica, you said that there's a budget for this. I've asked before for a budget. I haven't seen a budget about what all this stuff is coming from.
There's a grant amount, and so there was a contract that was awarded to Dan.
Right.
for his portion.
The 90,000, yeah,
And then there was a contract that was established for the data assistant that he's talking about.
yeah.
And then there was, and then there's another piece for the intermediary. and
Which
then
is the
there's-
210,000? Okay.
Yeah, and then there's a little bit left for the incidental. So basically, when Dan submitted the proposal, because there's not a budget within the county's budget for this, this was a grant that he submitted with the help of others. And within that grant request was a budget. And so we will.
And that budget has been shared. We can share it again with the commissioners.
I haven't seen
and,
it, so yeah, I'd be happy to see it.
Well, it's been shared a couple times. I've gone back and looked at the meeting packets to confirm that. And we'll share that again, but I think that gets to some of the questions that were asked earlier is once you get a federal grant approved with a budget, you don't deviate from that budget. You have to spend the money the way that you told them you're going to spend the money. So, even if Dan woke up one day and said, boy, I think spending 30 grand on Pocket Full of Feelings would be a great thing to do, you can't do that.
Oh, I'm not saying Dan is responsible for this. That's not what I'm saying at all. That's not what I'm saying at all. I'm saying that I think the system of pay for success has gotten certain things written into it that guarantee rewards, financial rewards for the companies that are doing it.
But what's beautiful about this project that we're into now is there is no requirement or guarantee that we will do pay for success.
Right, because the $350,000 is going to be spent one way or the other. And at the end, we may or may not come up with
As an
better.
information gathering experience, absolutely.
Right.
And one of the things we'll consider would be, is it feasible to pursue pay for success or some other financing model in order to bring high-quality preschool, in addition to the preschools that's already in our communities, can we bring more in? That's all we're going to do with this study, is to look at what are the possibilities. And then the local people will decide if they want to go on to actually finance anything, or just simply take that information and reflect on it.
Mr. Chairman? I usually think of myself as pretty analytical and maybe even a little cynical. And so I'm listening to my colleagues trying to understand the thrust of the concern. And I really want to hear what you're saying, because I trust that there are concerns. Maybe I'm hopelessly naive. Maybe I'm applying, holy cow, 47 years of experience working with daycare and Head Start, which I've done as a caseworker and a statewide program director, now as part of the community action team overseeing Head Start. So I thought, wow, what a great opportunity to analyze, to enrich, to support early childhood programs throughout these counties. So maybe I had a positivity bias instead of a negativity bias, but I really want to hear your concerns because I've heard them repeatedly, and I want to get at the thrust of what it is that causes you concern about this contract.
This is my biggest concern, is that we will be told, or the community will be told, that this is the best way to finance it, is through this is what's needed. I can't foresee what all the things are that are going to be, found out, but that this was the best way, and do a social impact bond, and that this could and probably would take away from public funding, because for public schools, if they don't use their money, then it goes away the following year.
But they don't have enough now.
I understand they don't have
It's
enough
gonna go
now,
unused.
but my concern is that, pardon me? My concern is that it could create a downward spiral, and that is my concern. And then we get more and more into depending on the private sector, and then there will be strings attached, and that's my concern. And I believe that in communicating with the superintendent, that they're aware of this. And they're also planning, this is the Warrenton district, they're planning to go for a bond in, I think, 5 to 6 years. And they don't want to jeopardize that.
Right.
Because and I could see their concern, they didn't say this, but so the community gets involved and says, wow, we could get, $100 million from Goldman Sachs, and so taxpayers hear this, well, we're not going to vote for this bond, and then bam, we're knit with them and all the strings that could come along. That, and I know that's an extreme, but that's my concern.
That's my concern also. It's not, I understand that things are changing. There's been a big push to privatize public schools for over 30 years. Unfortunately, I think we're closer to than we've been in a long time. I don't know what the future is going to be. And this, I guess this pay for success model is one way that people have figured out how to channel public money in a way that will turn a profit for people. That's my concern. I'm sure you have the best intentions, Dan. I'm not saying otherwise. I'm just saying I feel suspect of this system. But I know that this is a pay for success grant, and we accepted it. But the more that I read this is very sophisticated and very opaque to me. I mean, I think I understand what it's talking about, but it didn't to me, seemed like it was really meant to be clear communication. And so that raises some red flags for me.
So I appreciate you saying that, Commissioner, because I wrote this based upon.
Did you write this part, Exhibit 1?
I took
You wrote all of
portions.
this? 'Cause this sounds like it's directly from the company.
No,
This is- you wrote all
that's their writing.
Okay, that's right.
What I wrote was the agenda item summary.
Right.
And I took portions of that from their writing.
Okay.
But I attempted to, and apparently I didn't do a good enough job, to clarify what exactly they will do. And I guess I would just point out on page 273, the fifth line up, social finance will work with local partners to determine geographic focus. So they're going to work with the local folks to determine, can we, if we don't, if it's not feasible to put this into every community, every school district area, are there some that we can start with? It makes some logical sense to say, well, we might start with the larger population areas because we can provide transportation more easily. So maybe we start with Astoria, Warrenton, Seaside, Tillamook, Niacani. And we cannot reach out initially to Napa, Jewel, or Nestucca Valley. So it's going to be those local school districts, those local communities, and you and the county commissioners of Tillamook who will be asked, do you want to be a part of this or not? And all of those entities will have a choice of saying yay or nay. So no one is going.
Well, that's great, and I appreciate that. Under number 15, on the, I think it's the contract, it says, it is understood that the contractor must perform the services based in part on information furnished by county, and that contractor shall be entitled to rely on such information.
So that's me. I'm you. I'm the county. I'm working for you. So when they say it's going to be provided by the county, that's what I'm going to provide to them.
Okay, so you personally are responsible for getting this data. What are the intermediaries doing?
They're helping us determine what data we need to be collecting. And they will help in terms of determining the cost of facilities, of transportation, those kinds of things, so that when I'm out knocking on doors, and the assistant is helping me do that, then they are working to pull that data together that the assistant and I are gathering, and that I'm gathering by the use of my advisory team. They're going to say, I'm going to tell them, this is what I plan to do. Is this the route? Do you have any concerns with the route I plan to take? And they're going to say, well, yeah, that looks good, or try this other route. So they'll try to help me and the assistant be as efficient and effective as possible.
So your hope is at the end of this year that you will have data that will lead to some evidence-based plans? Is that what you're hoping for?
I'm hoping to have a complete understanding of what are the current resources, what are the costs of adding to those resources so that we have high-quality preschool opportunities and transportation and pay for teachers.
So what's the current capacity and where you can go with it?
Right. And once we have that price tag of what's it going to cost to get to the ultimate, then we sit down with the stakeholders, the government entities that will make that decision. And that's part of what social finance has experience in doing, is helping get that information into a format that makes sense to the potential payers.
Now, one of the things that you found attractive about this company, and I'm sure they're very good, they were one of the originals, is that they will stay in it long-term beyond the first year, you said. Does that mean that they would then be delivering the new preschool?
No. They would stay in terms of helping us in terms of establishing a contract. Now, this is simply a feasibility study. This is just information gathering. And then from that.
Feasibility of
making
having daycare in this county and Tillamook County.
high quality preschool in Clatsop and Tillamook County.
Okay.
If we get to a point where the stakeholders say, we want to move ahead, we want to do this, then it's a matter of putting together a contract between those stakeholders that want to be a part of it and the potential funding source. And that's a whole nother level. This is not going to be creating those contracts. But they are willing and they have experience in setting up those kinds of contracts.
Now, would that entail at the end of this year, the end of this 12 months, that there would be another grant that would implement it, or
I'm assuming that we would be.
Are they responsible for getting that capital involved?
I'm assuming that we would be, seeking other funding, other grants to help us in that process. No one's being asked to pony up the money to do that. But once we know, part of what we're trying to do is we're trying to get shovel ready. We're not shovel ready right now. We're not ready to build preschools or to implement preschools of the high quality that we're talking about. We have a few spread out throughout the county who are working hard and doing a good job. But what we're looking at is we're looking at providing free preschool. Most of the kids that we're hoping to attract are not in preschools now because they can't afford it.
I know.
Okay? So we're not competing with the current preschools. We don't want to compete with the current preschools. And we know that some families, they don't want their child in preschool, 8 hours a day or whatever. Okay? They want them 2 days a week or 3 days a week for half a day. And that's a good experience. What we're trying to do is see if there's the need and there's a desire to have a preschool that's truly high quality, that has lasting effects based upon the research that we've studied and will continue to study.
Are you and your team working with the current public school systems?
We are, to the point that we're asking them, do you want to be a part of this? We're going to be educating their staff as we move along and getting information from them as we move along, so we're partners in this.
Okay.
So right now, I would say primarily it's working with the superintendents and some of the principals and special ed directors and some of those folks.
Because I think that is where the majority of my constituents are concerned, because I think what they ultimately wish is that there is a feasibility study for the current local public school system so that we could figure out how we can attain more funding for our current system. And I think it's very important to be talking to them because that's where the majority of our children will be going to school in our county.
Maybe that's my next project after this one.
I think that's my biggest concern is that we need to, instead of bringing in something private and new to put on top of something, we need to fix the problems we currently have.
And I think what this is trying to do is help relieve some of the pressure that our current educators are experiencing. Because we have a golden opportunity in ages 0 to 5, when that brain is developing. By age 5, it's 90% developed. If the kids come in better prepared for kindergarten, again, the research that we've done shows that when they've experienced this really high-quality preschool experience, they come in better prepared for kindergarten. They end up being, fluent readers by 3rd grade, and that's the #1 predictor for high school graduation. And as you know, our high school graduation rate in the state of Oregon is amongst the worst in the country. So this is starting at base level. And I fully agree, having spent 37 years in the K-12 system, that there's things that we need to do better in the K-12 system. I have an opportunity, we have an opportunity to see what we can do to send the K-12 system kids that are better prepared, and that's going to help them.
Yeah, just, it concerns me how that's going to look. So I think that is, and it's not just me, it's what I'm hearing.
Yep.
And I think that one of the best resources you have is speaking to those people who are getting those kids. So our current public school administrators and teachers.
My last 3 years, heading up to Clatsop Kinder Ready, I've been involved with many of those folks. You know, I've invited them to be a part of what we're doing. And again, having spent 23 years prior to that in this county, in those schools, I maintain those kinds of relationships, that communication. So I know I haven't been there yesterday or today, but that communication is open, and I welcome them to contact me if I haven't contacted them.
Yeah,
So-
I think that's great. I mean, I hope that's the case because I see like a funding of another private preschool, and I think, well, my kids didn't have pencils this year. So, I mean, we have some things we need to work on for funding right now for what we need. So those are my concerns.
And I would agree with you, Commissioner Clement. So what you're saying, this interchange right here that I'm seeing, is that before, a few minutes ago, you had said that you didn't want to compete with public schools, but you sound like you're open
I don't want to
to.
compete with the current preschool providers.
But that doesn't mean that you're not going to be, won't you be getting data from them and?
And I will be inviting them, do you want to be a part of this project?
And what have you found so far?
Well, I haven't had a chance to start that.
Oh, okay.
I've had some preliminary, this is what we're doing kind of thing, do you want to be a part of it?
Okay.
But I've been focused on trying to find the right intermediary and try to find the right
Okay.
assistant.
But you
and get-
think like Commissioner Clement was saying, because I agree with her, that the public school options will be included in this study?
This study is focused on preschool, it's not focused on
We don't have,
K-12.
I guess we don't have public preschool in this state. Other states
Well,
have. but we don't.
Warrenton has one, Jewel has
So
one.
they'll be included?
Oh, yeah.
Okay, that's all I'm
Absolutely.
asking. That's all I'm asking, because it sounded like you were not going to do that, so I must have misheard you. Sorry.
No problem. There's a lot going on.
Yes, there
A lot
is.
to absorb.
Any more questions or comments for Mr. Gaffney? If not, I'd look for a motion.
Mr. Chair, let me just grab this thing. I move to authorize the county manager to sign a contract with Social Finance, Inc. in the amount of $210,000 and authorize the county manager to sign contract amendments.
Based on my conversation with the superintendent of communication who wants this, I will second it.
We have a motion and a second. Is there any further deliberations? I'd just like to say I'd really appreciate your really taking the time to answer the commission's questions. And like I said in the very beginning, and like I told the paper, you know, we have a lot of concerns, and I felt like you've really, you know, stepped up and really have done a good job in alleviating some of the concerns of the commission. And so,
Thank you.
that being said, all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously.
Thank you.
There you go.
Thank you each very, very much. I appreciate it, and please continue to send those questions to me. I want to make sure that we're clear, we're transparent, and we're a team working together for our kids.
So I really appreciate that you've helped us develop some level of trust with what can be a very large change in a positive direction in this county and in other counties. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Okay, our final item tonight on the business agenda is the memorialize the transfer of civil commitment procedures to the district attorney. I had a conversation with the district attorney about this briefly. This is fairly straightforward. County counsel, did you have a staff report or anything to say to this?
I can comment on it briefly. This is actually something that the DA has been doing, and I would say frankly as a bit of a favor in the county. Doesn't have to do this, but they've been doing it for a number of years, but we recently got contact from DHS, I think, one of the state agencies that said they just wanted to see something in writing that he was authorized to do this. So that's really why we're in front of you, is just to memorialize what we've been doing for a number of years.
I have a couple questions, and maybe this isn't the place, but is there a difference between civil and criminal commitment?
Yeah.
So, and those will both be handled by the district attorney, obviously?
I think it's just for civil for this.
Yeah, the criminal are handled by the district attorney anyway, because that's just a judge ordering somebody to be evaluated to see if they're capable of standing trial. The civil mental commitment, unfortunately, with our mental health system, often the person who needs committing ends up in jail.
Right, right.
And they then decide that really this person needs help. They don't have criminal intent, and go through a civil process where the judge puts them under the authority of the hospital, Oregon Hospital, for treatment. Not to determine if they're capable of standing trial, but for treatment. To get well.
Right, and there's an appeal process in the state?
There's an appeal process through the state and so on. And it works much, much better for the district attorney to handle it because there's usually a parallel case that would be getting dismissed of a criminal action. The DA has all the information.
Yeah, right.
You know, plus you don't have to pay him.
So when we're doing this, is this something that we'll do each year, or is this something that now it's a different? How long does this work? I mean, what does this mean to memorialize?
This should be permanent.
Yeah,
We've never had to do it before. He's been doing it since '99.
So we're
But
just getting
the
our
court
I's
system
dotted,
just
T's
went
crossed.
electronic, and I suspect that's what triggered it. So we'll get this into the court system, state courts, and once that's in there, it should be the end of it until there's a new DA or.
Yeah, I was going to say,
all
either
right.
this DA or a new DA could decide they don't want to do it, but.
Okay, all right, thank you.
Shirley?
Sure.
I move to approve a resolution in order authorizing the district attorney to perform mental commitments on behalf of Clatsop County.
Second.
We have a motion to second to approve a resolution order authorizing the district attorney to perform mental commitments on behalf of Clatsop County. Any further deliberations? Seeing no further deliberations, all those in favor, aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for that report. Commissioner reports. Commissioner Thompson.
I'm going to start with the hardest one first. I have a little notebook and I carry around Sergeant Jason Gooding's memorial. What do you call this? Whatever you call it, is about his memorial when they passed it out. So Tuesday in the state capitol, I sat between Senator Johnson and Sergeant Gooding's folks as Representative Boone carried forward Senate Joint Resolution 6 to once more honor him, and that passed unanimously. So his parents, as Senator Johnson said, I mean, it's like ripping the heart out every time. On the other hand, once again, he was honored. So that was due to the fact that Senator Johnson and Representative Boone carried that forward to continue that recognition. So I appreciated being able to be part of that. Representative Boone also got a bill passed to honor volunteer firefighters. There are 8,000 volunteer firefighters in Oregon, and now with the passage of this House bill, once it's signed into law, we'll be able to have a checkoff system on our tax refund form so that we can donate to the Volunteer Firefighters Association, so we can help support our volunteer firefighters. So it was really First Responders Day at the House of Representatives, thanks to Representative Boone. So I appreciated that. CREA, the Community Renewable Energy Resource Association, came to town last Friday, had a conversation about cap and trade, which is about measuring and getting money for not emitting carbon. That was on Friday. On Monday, there was another cap and trade discussion. Why this at AOC, Energy, Environment, and Land Use Committee, why this is interesting is because what's coming forward now is the development of a market where we can get money for not cutting trees. So yahoo, because any way that we can help protect the environment and add economic value, I think is a good thing. So there's momentum for this. There are lots of details which I won't go into, but it's very good process. The third thing, I limit myself to 3 things because I don't want to bore you. Arch Cape Design Review, it's alive and well. 60 people were at the Arch Cape Firehouse last Saturday morning. So we did not do away with Arch Cape Design Review. What we did was change the auspices under which, I'm looking at you, Jack Heffernan, we changed the auspices, thank you, under which it operates. It's still active. 60 neighbors came. It wasn't just a small group of people with the right to impose quasi-judicial authority. It was 60 neighbors, and they came from all over Arch Cape. They came from Falcon Cove Beach. We all sat together in the room and had quite an amiable conversation about the renovation and building of this new Arch Cape Deli, which is going to have a post office and meeting rooms and a restaurant. It's going to use old wood. We've got a local architect from Arch Cape. It's a good deal, which did not stop one neighbor from approaching me at the end of the meeting and calling my criticism of some of the ways that the former Design Review Committee had gone wrong vile. So I went back. I appreciate the clerk of the board's recording the minutes because I thought I had praised them when they did well. I did. Thank you for capturing that. There were some ways they went wrong. I think this board surgically excised quasi-judicial authority, and that will help them continue to do right, not only in Arch Cape for a small group of neighbors, all over Clatsop County. So that's what we as a county board of commissioners have done, has been to empower citizen participation and having a real voice in neighborhood livability. It's alive and well and working. Thank you.
Commissioner Sullivan.
Thank you. I attended the Northwest Senior Disability Services meeting by phone on May 25th. We still need Clatsop volunteers for the senior and the disability advisory committees. I need 1 for the disability advisory and 2 for the senior the senior advisory committee. They report to the board that I sit on. I also attended the monthly Senior Care Network in Warrenton. They recently helped with the Joyce Beadle Dementia Workshop that was at the Holiday Inn. And I wanted to give you an update on the Clatsop Community College robotics team, which 2 of my nephews are on. They qualified for the international competition in Long Beach, California at the end of next week. You can follow them on Facebook at CCC ROV team. And they are one of only 10 teams that qualified in the United States. There's over 20 teams that qualified worldwide, and we're very proud of them. On June 2nd, I attended the Science to Policy Summit in Vancouver, Washington, and Congresswoman Suzanne Bonamici also attended, and it was very informative. On June 7th, I attended the Board of Forestry meeting in Salem, and I've included the agenda with the papers that I've handed out. On the 21st, I will be, if all goes well, in Westport for the reception for the donation from the Georgia-Pacific Wana Mill of 27 acres to Westport for the creation of a park to benefit Westport residents. I will be attending the County College this weekend in McMinnville. I've also handed out to my fellow commissioners here emails between the FTLAC members concerning Habitat Conservation Plan, or HCP, and I've also, in that is also the state talking points, along with a letter written by Tim Josie as of March 7th, and we will be speaking about the HCP at the next FTLAC meeting scheduled July 14th. I'll be meeting with Dan Goody June 26th to talk about pesticide use and HCPs, and I'll be taking a tour with Steve Zika at the Hampton Properties June 29th. Finally, I want to give a shout out to the Daily Historian. I've subscribed to it since moving to Clatsop County over 10 years ago. We're very fortunate as a community to have a daily newspaper. It provides a common conversation for the county and the region. So it can also be a starting point, that's for sure. You may have read the May 25th front page article, Who's in Charge? County Commissioners Split Over Role. Here are my thoughts on that article. I've been a county commissioner for 6 months now. Certainly I've learned a lot and continue learning. It takes time to read the material, do research, think about decision, talk with other folks. This means less time for my family and friends. It also means I reschedule my normal work hours or take personal time from work. This is what I signed up for when I decided to run as an elected official. I'm okay with it. In fact, I'm honored to be a commissioner. I believe in government and the citizens' role in our government. Clatsop commissioners are elected officials who also work other jobs. I believe calling ourselves simply volunteers does not cover our responsibilities to the public. I feel it is my job as a commissioner to have an overview of what goes on in the county. This body is to set policy. This begins by setting goals. I would like to ask this body to go back to our discussion of goals. I'm not satisfied with what has been listed so far. Goals are SMART. S-M-A-R-T, specific, measurable, action-oriented, realistic, and time-bound. We have yet to achieve this. Clearly, I have much to learn about the budget process. I agree with what Commissioner Thompson said earlier, that next year I hope to have more input, and I know during the Budget Committee we talked, Director Monica Steele said perhaps get a 101 budget thing. So I just wasn't real sure about the discussion and how to change things. I'm still not. I would have liked to have more discussion on whether or not Clatsop County needs a new assistant county manager, or if we need to do bonus pay for managers above and beyond the cost of living increase, vacation buyback, and full insurance, et cetera. How are these and many more decided? I'm still learning this. I do know, however, that having a single 9-hour meeting with one 15-minute lunch is not an effective way to make decisions. And I know that having more commissioners present is also important. Finally, I need some guidance from this body concerning Clatsop behavioral health. We need to have a work session or an executive session. I continue to hear of issues in the community, but are unsure about how to discuss it due to pending litigation. Again, another shout out to the Daily Historian. I learned a lot about the Respite Center from the May 5th article, Crisis Respite Center Offers Temporary Sanctuary. But I'd like to hear more about CBH from these meetings, and first and also something beyond PowerPoint presentations. And I know it's a very complex problem that people are working very hard to solve. I know this, and I know that we are not the only county that are struggling with this. And it's a nationwide problem. But I just feel, as I continue to hear from people in the community, I want to know more information. I want to know what we're doing in a more detailed manner. This brings me again to process and decision making. I feel it is important for issues to be brought to the body as a whole for discussion. One-on-one meetings are limiting, and I think it's important that each commissioner hears the thoughts, opinions, and ideas of fellow commissioners during a discussion. Together, we can come up with the best solutions and plans. Together, we are most effective. And I appreciate all the discussion we had in this meeting tonight, and also in our work session. Let's have more of it. So, thank you.
Commissioner Nebaker.
I attended the Public Safety Coordinating Council, and I might have covered this before, but I think it's worth repeating. The juvenile department prevention plan was approved, and part of that is the Girls Circle Group, which is part of this, and the county receives money from the Department of Education, approximately $20,000 per year, to help pay for the head of the Girls Circle program. There's 2 groups. They meet 8 to 12 weeks, one in Astoria and then Broadway Middle School. The focus is on mentoring, building healthy relationships, helping those girls to make healthy decisions with regard to drugs and alcohol through group meetings and events such as outdoor trips. These are assessed through, they look at high risk but non-offending girls. And there's approximately 12 girls at a time. So they are assessed and then reassessed about 6 months later. And so far, what the report is that it's having a very good effect. I'm not sure this is verifiable, but someone in the Justice Department system was saying that 10% of the homeless population use 80% of county resources in the criminal justice system.
Really?
This is through law enforcement, shelters, food resources, mental health. And part of the problem is if they're not signed up with OHP, that's a problem. I received a phone message that the study is in for the economic impact for Clatsop County from the arts. I haven't seen the data yet, but I'll report on that at the next meeting. And about the carbon, is that called carbon sequestration?
Cap and trade.
Cap and trade, well, okay. This is something that Neil Main, I don't know if any of you know Neil Main. He started looking at this quite a few years ago, and we've had discussions about it. He's with the North Coast Land Conservancy, or he was the head of it. He began it. He's stepped down. But they have forest land, significant forest land, and the part of the problem is how does a nonprofit agency manage this? Well, if they can get money from this, then it can continue to flourish and benefit the area of the planet, so. that's
Maybe
my
even the Elliott, huh?
Maybe.
We can hope.
Commissioner Clement.
I attended the Memorial Day Maritime Memorial Tribute. There was, it's always huge, I go every year, but this year it just seemed like it was really big. And I realized that there was over 900 names on the wall, so it's growing and growing. More people are dying and getting lost at sea and being put on the wall, and it's a great tribute to everyone. And there was some great speakers. Ray Gopher's granddaughter spoke. It was wonderful. I actually didn't know much about her, even though she was the mayor of Uniontown, but my family grew up over there, so I didn't know much about her, but she's a pretty amazing person, and it's a nice tribute to her and everyone each year. And then shortly after that, we went to the Ocean View Cemetery. That's where a lot of my family are buried, and I have a very large family, including my father. And I usually go twice a year but I hadn't been this year. And I don't know if the county manages Ocean View Cemetery. Okay, it's going way downhill. And it's sad, and I felt like sort of disrespectful. It was very overgrown. I had to my mom was like down on the ground, like digging to find the hole because the grass had grown over the flower plot. And it's just, it's pretty expensive to be buried there, and it's always been at least mowed. I mean, maybe it hasn't been maintained, but at least it's been mowed, and especially before Memorial Day when there are hundreds of people coming here to see their relatives, and it was really upsetting. And, I think it was upsetting to a lot of people, and I didn't know who to contact, if it was us or who it was, but it's definitely, it just needs to be mowed, at least, especially before lots and lots of people are coming from different areas to our community to see and view and pay respect on Memorial Day. So that's my report.
I was going to
Go ahead.
Did you have something to add to the cemetery issue?
Yeah, that was discussed at our countywide meeting, and actually the second time, because it was also discussed at the first countywide meeting.
Oh, good.
And mostly the mayor saying, hey, you know, it isn't just Astoria residents that, have family members that are buried there, it's all over the county. And I don't know if the county has been approached or other cities have been approached, I don't know, but it is a problem and it needs to be addressed.
Never seen it
Mayor
ever
Lemire
like that.
has put forward the idea of a countywide cemetery district. And Cam was there, and it's something definitely to look at.
I think it was because Mr. Rummel died, he used to mow the whole thing. But I think that he died maybe 5 years ago, so I don't know. Last year it was beautiful. I don't know what happened, but something needs to be done, I feel. I've never seen a cemetery, except for a really old one that is not active anymore. And even those on Memorial Day, even Lewis and Clark was mowed, somebody mowed it.
Well, and as far as the cost, it is the least expensive of any cemeteries that I know.
To get buried there?
It's extremely inexpensive. That's maybe
that's
why it could have something to do with it, but it needs
I
to be
know
spread
that
out.
it hasn't gotten less expensive. Something else has changed. It's always been very nice and maintained. So something's happened.
Okay, let's see here. This morning, the budget, I'm a member and chair of the Crest Budget Committee. And the Budget Committee has approved the budget, and we're going to send that to a vote of the full board next week. And the Crest budget, of course, we get a lot of pass-through dollars from BPA. Not much has changed. There's been a 7% decrease in Crest budget, which is fairly normal as different projects come online and go offline. So I'm pleased to say that the Crest budget has been approved, and our audit showed no discrepancies or any findings. So that's a very good report for Crest and the budget. Attended the monthly Northwest Oregon Housing Authority meeting. We have lost one of our members. We're looking for a member that's for the Housing Committee that is utilizing NOAA services. So I wanted to put that out there. And otherwise, NOAA is functioning very well within budget. And we're just trying to build capacity. That's all I have. County Manager, please.
One thing I forgot. We had the first fisheries tour. It was amazing. It was very cool. And I had 3 takeaways from that, because this was our first one. We've had the 27 years of the forestry tour. This is the first year for the fisheries. Really well done. 3 things. The fish that are taken sustainably because of the regulations that are in place. Second thing, there's a shortage of people to actually work on the fishing boats. Third thing, there is a shortage of people to work in the fish processing plants. They don't have a place to live. So not all of the processing lines can operate because there aren't enough people to staff them. They're being bused from Longview, from Portland, even from as far as Centralia, Washington.
Do you know what the pay is for those people?
It varies depending on the skill level involved.
It's piecework a lot of times.
They're working 10 to 12-hour days, aren't they?
They are reducing the hours that they work because of the time that's involved with the extensive commute. So I continue to work on housing issues. Had a meeting this afternoon. We'll continue to work on housing issues because it's fundamental to our economic well-being. Businesses all over the county are having to reduce their hours of operation because they don't have enough staff, because people don't have a place to live. So continues to be resilience continues to be a priority. The economic resilience of a community is what provides the catastrophic resilience when there's some kind of event. So the two are related.
Is there any way we can find out what the housing need is for which sector? I mean, is it everyone? Is it couldn't just be people who can well afford a nice house. I can't.
That's why we need a housing study, is to gather that data.
That is a perfect segue. One of the hot topics, I think one of the topics of most interest at the joint city-county meeting we had was the fact that we need to answer some of these questions. We know we have a housing problem, but we haven't really defined, exactly what that problem is, and then therefore what the solutions are. I think those of you who were at the meeting or that heard about the meeting, one of the things we did talk about is our neighbors to the south in Tillamook County recently completed a housing study. We handed out copies of it at that meeting. We have copies available. Since that meeting, I've been following up with, with Astoria, Warrenton, Seaside, Gerhardt, and Cannon Beach to gauge their interest in participating, both as a participant but also financially participating. And the feedback I've got so far has been pretty positive. So, it could be that, I don't know if it'll be 2 weeks, but I would think at an upcoming meeting, maybe in July, we might be coming back, with something a little bit more tangible to say, this is kind of a pool of money we're looking to put together. We need to put together probably some kind of steering committee, to put together an RFP, decide what we're looking for, and, see if we can find someone that can come in and do the kind of analysis that you're asking about. Those of you that read the Tillamook housing study, even though these are rural counties, there's some very, very distinct differences in the housing markets, even within a rural county. And so that gets kind of to your point, I guess, is, what problem are we trying to solve? What are we shooting at here? And so sounds to me like this is something we're going to be able to move forward on, at least based on the feedback I've gotten so far. So, stay tuned with that. But again, I think that discussion probably is coming back, I'm guessing July. I don't think it'll be the end of this month. A couple of other things. One project which you may have just heard some things about earlier this week. I think there was an article in the Daily Historian. Seaside is looking at a really pretty significant urban renewal district. It's over 500 acres. Part of that is outside the city limits, outside the urban growth boundary, so the county is involved in that. We just had our first meeting with them, I think Tuesday, yesterday. So we just got some information from them yesterday about what they're proposing. I mean, we're still reviewing it to make sure we understand all that. But if you understand the implications of that, approving the urban renewal district essentially means that none of the new tax revenue coming off of any development in that district would be available to any of the taxing entities. They're proposing a 25-year, it's actually called a TIF, a tax increment financing district. They would obviously use that money for a lot of improvements, some of which are related to the new high school down there, but a lot of them are just general community improvements. So again, we'll be back in front of you with that issue once we've had a chance to do some more analysis. They are hoping, because I think they're hoping maybe to approve this and move forward. I think they said the end of August, so we're going to try to get that back in front of you in July at some point. So just again, be aware of that. That's another issue that's coming your way. I know Commissioner Sullivan mentioned, CBH and the Respite Center. Again, just a reminder that the county is one of 4 partners that are basically form the board of directors for the Respite Center. Part of the requirement, we chose CBH to be our operator, so we have a contract with them. Part of that requirement is that as a board, it's actually called the Caring for Clatsop Coalition, that we will approve their annual budget for the Respite Center. So we had a meeting last week. We're pretty close on the budget. We requested some changes be made to that budget, and their fiscal year starts July 1, so sometime this month. So, we are involved at that level, and at that level with the respite center, we are able to say, we need to see some expenses reduced here. We need to see some things change. CBH's management, or the respite center's management, has been very good to work with at this point. The first year, which is not quite up for the respite center from a financial standpoint, was really challenging. Certainly, the budget looks better next year, and we hope that we can have some positive results on a financial side, and also keeping the census up and providing good service to people. And there are really a lot of good stories coming out of the respite center, I'd say over the last 6-8 months, but we still have to be able to financially sustain it, So we're working towards that goal. The last thing I would mention, and I'd be happy to answer questions, I know you're all aware, I sent some stuff out to you a while back. We are a named party also in a lawsuit regarding CBH. We are planning to have the attorney that is handling that lawsuit for us to have an executive session with you at our next meeting so you can get briefed and get up.
Good,
It's
thank
very
you.
early in
Thank
the
you.
process, so not much has happened yet.
It's July. Yeah.
So, or July,
Yeah,
sorry,
July
July
26th
26th.
meeting.
So it'll be July 26th that we'll have that attorney, and we will be doing a executive session with the attorney, can brief you on the lawsuit, where we're at, and everything that's going on with that. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions if anybody has any. So, yeah.
Cameron, could you give me a brief update on the never-ending charter situation here? Have we made a deal?
I don't know what to tell you.
was afraid to do this.
I have had so many conversations with Charter, and they have made so many promises that they just sort of blow by. The last time I had any kind of commitment from them, they were going to have service to this building by May 1st. Well, it's June 14th today, and they don't have service to this building yet. And I asked them to do this last time, frankly, and that was when they made that commitment. I did tell Charter that they needed to send someone here to come in front of the commissioners and explain in public why they are unable to meet their obligations to us under this contract. And then they said, oh, man, we'll have that done by May 1st. So I think that's what we need to do. I think we need to have someone from Charter come here and say, why can't you meet your obligations under this agreement? We've been patient. We've been patient for a year and a half now.
We've been patient for a lot
Years,
longer than
because
that.
it took us
May I-
years to get the
Oh, please.
the
Yeah, it took
franchise
years just to
agreement.
get
Is
the
this-
All the
agreement.
plugs.
Is this a PUC? I mean, this is a public utility. I would rather elevate it than simply say, talk to us. Is that possible?
Well, I want to bring as many, I got to choose my words here. I want to bring as much on this as we can, because I don't know if we need to write them a letter or whatever, but I think, Cam, we need to really hit hard. Because in the past, this has just been a problem. and-
They have not engaged with us in a respectful negotiation. So if they are regulated, I think a complaint to the Public Utilities Commission is called for.
Okay. Yeah, I'm looking around for consensus on that. Does the board, by consensus, direct Cam to
Try.
At least
try our-
approach.
We'll follow up aggressively.
Let's see what our options are on here. We need some direction on this, because it's not right, and people are complaining about it.
Yeah, and it,
We spent money.
certainly not for lack of effort on our part, but.
That's right. And we, yeah.
It's, and again, you know how this goes. I mean, after you talk to somebody 25 times, at some point, you're like, okay, I just don't believe anything you say to me anymore, so.
More leverage.
Cam, I have another question on recycling. I understood from your email that it looked like we had a signed contract and it was good to go, it was going to go on Facebook, but then I heard in the community last night that the site wasn't ready for it and was taken away. I mean, where are we at with that for?
I'm not aware of that. I know they dropped the
I talked to
bins.
someone
It's been
from out there, and
3
they said
weeks
that
ago, maybe.
that they dropped the thing, and the sheriff's department said, hey, no, we're not we're not ready for that. That hasn't been taken care of yet.
No, I don't think that's what happened. What happened is the Public Works guys have an area that this is a shared facility between
Right.
Public Works and the sheriff. They have a place that they would like to put that. They're going to do some paving out there anyway, so they put it in a temporary spot. Once they pave, they'll have a paved spot
Oh,
to
okay.
set this down on. So it's still on site, just not maybe right in the exact location, where it's going to be permanently.
Okay, okay. Okay, that's progress.
Okay,
Thank you, everyone.
meeting's adjourned. Thank you.